Session 20. Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the last and the final Prophet of Allah, the man for the mankind, Quran and Muhammad, by ex-Brigadier Mustansar Billah. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. We begin with the name of Allah, who is most gracious and tremendously merciful. Surah 4:5 Al-Jasiyah, verse 2:6. قُلْ اللَّهُ يُحْيِيكُمْ ثُمَّ يُمِيتُكُمْ ثُمَّ يَجْمَعُكُمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ وَلَكِنَّ أَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ لَا يَعْلَمُونَ. You say, it is God alone who has shaped you first, created you, given you life, then He'll make you dead, and then gather you on the doomsday beyond a shadow of doubt, inevitably, and then gather you around on the doomsday beyond a shadow of doubt, inevitably. But a majority of people do not register it. But a majority of people do not register it. Brothers and sisters, today we are on the last session of the collection of hadith, the third and the last session on the collection of hadith. Arabs, as we know, were quite vocal, arrogant, at occasions insolent, even with the Prophet, peace be upon him, and the rightly gathered caliphs of Islam. Like many other scholars of hadith, earlier, Imam Malik compiled a book of Hadith Muwatta in 120 after Hijrah, that is AD 152, that is about 110 years after the Prophet, and began teaching Hadith with no hesitation at all. Not a single person criticized him or dubbed him as quoting false references, that is, taking names of people who didn't narrate the hadith, not a single person nor raised any objections to the words, the contents of even a single narration. It was a time coinciding nearly with the departure of the last companion of the prophets, and Tabi'in. I repeat, it was a time coinciding nearly with the departure of the last companion of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and now Tabi'in, companions of the companions, were at their height of glory in every field. Imam Malik quoted certain Tabi'in, that is, companions of the companions, who were present in Medina, and none ever objected that they were misquoted, and the grave sin of telling a lie on the Prophet, peace be upon him, would rest with him and not them. Thousands of people came from all over the caliphate, heard the Imam narrating the entire compilation, made copies, returned to their areas, and every man narrated these to thousands of people, hundreds making copies of Muwatta. Suyuti names 50 people who learned Muwatta from Imam Malik and taught it to thousands of people in their respective areas. It may be difficult to digest that not even a single man among the people who risked their lives for the love of Allah, for the supremacy of the deen of the Prophet, for the eradication of evil, injustice in the world, didn't have the courage to question Imam Malik, knowing well that he was misquoting the Prophet, may the thought be cursed, or creating false chain of narrations of hadith. It isn't worth believing that false chains of reporters were created by scholars of hadith to coin hadith, and there wasn't ever a single motivated, dedicated, rightly guided Muslim who could object to it. Actually, Islam has never been short of honest, cool, calculative, dedicated, unbiased scholars in every period of its history, who never hesitated launching barrages of criticism were required. And these scholars never hesitated launching barrages of criticism were required. As an example, it revealed during the process of verification, vetting, and pruning of hadith, that one or two narrators in the chain were untrustworthy. So all ahadith narrated by them were discarded straight out. There was no press. All scriptures were handwritten. The process of dissemination of information was slow, as there were no modern-day communications. The untrustworthy narrations that peeved the muhaddithin, scholars of hadith, weren't disseminated quickly, and so the ill-founded, unreliable narrations remained confined and restricted for the same reasons. As the scholars of hadith spread all over the Islamic Caliphate with its expansion, so did the efforts to prune, verify, vet the collections and scriptures intensify. Muhaddithin of all the seats of learning established certain standards, verification, and sort of litmus tests to gauge, to segregate, separate the reliable hadith and the unreliable. Scholars worked pertinaciously, determinedly, to make the registers, books of hadith, lucidly reliable. With the passage of time, the standards and tools, methodologies of testing, verifying, vetting, gauging hadith also came to be perfected, thus enabling the latest scholars, students of hadith, not to put a foot wrong. Well-organized, dedicated efforts to verify, vet, prune hadith came into perfection about 10 to 11 generations, about 250 years after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him. I repeat, well-organized, dedicated efforts to verify, vet, prune hadith came into perfection about 10 to 11 generations, about 250 years after the death of the Prophet, peace be upon him. All such efforts earlier were not perfect and remained local, and such odd handwritten scriptures weren't disseminated so extensively. So it is not the recording of hadith that took place 250 years after the death of the Prophet, but the perfection of recording hadith. And that was the perfection of recording hadith that was achieved at this time after the Prophet, peace be upon him. Scholars like Bukhari, Tirmidhi, Muslim, Ahmad, Ibn Kathir pinpointed, segregated, discarded the doubtful, questionable, unreliable narrations and achieved perfection in recording the most authentic, reliable hadith. Their collections, books of hadith, gained acclamation of scholars all over the Islamic world, for none could find any grounds or excuses to object. These books of hadith have remained in their perfect shape since almost over 1,000 years, and efforts to shake their credibility, authenticity haven't succeeded so far. As such, the ignoramus, illiterate on hadith, ill-educated, ill-informed, and the ill-motivated, the escapists can only say it was recorded 250 years after the death of the Prophet. The ignorant believers become skeptical, confused. The Islamic scholars take such pontifications as simple junk, balderdash. These books were a product of 30 to 50 years of dedicated, unbiased, transparent measures, standards of classifying, grading hadith into various categories vis-a-vis their authenticity. Unfortunately, rather than recognizing, appreciating these prodigious, marvelous, astonishing, authoritative works that have no parallel in any other society or religion, till date, even those criticize unhesitatingly who do not know what is meant by hadith. I repeat, unfortunately, rather than recognizing, appreciating these prodigious, marvelous, astonishing, authoritative works that have no parallel in any other society or religion till date, even those criticize unhesitatingly who do not know what is meant by a hadith. Muslim scholars have worked so much on hadith that even a catalogue of books on hadith today would be spread over thousands of pages. I repeat, Muslim scholars have worked so much on hadith that even a catalogue of books on hadith today would be spread over thousands of pages. And there is a weighty reason behind these efforts. Every student of Quran knows that Quran can neither be interpreted nor followed without the assistance of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Hadith, the interpretations, explanations, elaborations of the intent of Quran revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, other than the word of Quran. I repeat that Muslim scholars have worked so much on hadith that even a catalogue of books on hadith today will be spread over thousands of pages. And there is a weighty reason behind these efforts. Every student of Quran knows that Quran can neither be interpreted nor followed without the assistance of the Prophet, peace be upon him. Hadith, the interpretations, explanations, elaborations of the intent of Quran revealed to the Prophet, peace be upon him, other than the word of Quran. As such, it was critical to record, retain, scrutinize, verify, and disseminate hadith, weeding out the fictionary elements. I repeat at the end, as such, it was critical to record, retain, scrutinize, verify, and disseminate hadith, weeding out the fictionary elements. That's all for today, and that's all on the subject. Please pray for me, ex-Brigadier Mustansar Billah. Jazakallah.